My name is Chanae Baker, and I am a mom. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I'm tired. I'm exhausted as I stand up here tonight, but we must persist. I'm Chanae Baker. I was born and raised here. I left and said I would never come back, and I was gone for a long time, and I never came back. I came back in 2016 because my dad got sick, and I needed to come back, and I needed to take care of him. I want you to know that I am a product of the Alachua County Public School System. I was a gifted student since second grade at J.J. Finley, Westwood, and then Eastside. I want you to know I went to middle school in the 90s. I had my first black teacher in sixth grade. Her name was Frankie Hill. And Lord, I could not stand her in sixth grade. It wasn't until I became an adult to realize the reason that she was so hard on me and the reason that she pushed me is because she knew my potential and she knew the importance of me knowing my identity and who I was. I didn't have another black teacher until I actually reached high school, and I was actually in AP trigonometry and geometry, which means even with that teacher, Dr. Marie Herring, had I not been an honor student, I wouldn't have had her. I point that out to say, because when I was in school, I wanted to be a little white girl or a little mixed girl with a name like Robin or Stacy, because I wanted to be normal. Because to me, everybody that was normal and everybody that looked like me, there were none. I was the only black face that my teacher saw all day long in middle school. At that time, teachers had 5 classes. So imagine being the only black face. So I would like you to know that anybody who knew me in middle school remembers me as the quiet girl. Let's just say I got the east side and that changed. So ironically, I actually was supposed to go into IB. I did not go into IB because I wanted to go to GHS. I grew up on 5th Avenue. So therefore, I was supposed to go to J.J. Finley, Westwood, and GHS. I ended up having to go to Eastside anyway because I ended up having to move my aunt and uncle, and we were zoned to Eastside. So I took honors and AP classes, so I still ended up at Eastside, but I'm glad that I did. Now, I'm a mom of 4 children. The first time my kids entered Alachua County Public Schools was 2016. Before that, they went to schools in Marion County, and then went to school in Fayette and Fulton County in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. I want to point out something. Y'all see my shirt? How many of y'all think I work at Oak Hall? I know it. The reason I asked that question, because no matter where I wear this shirt, everybody naturally assumes that this black face works at the school, and that's the only reason I'm entitled to wear this shirt. That goes to implicit bias. And that's the reason that I want to point it out. One of the major issues in this particular district is how detrimental bias is into the culture of low expectations. I want you to know my family pays tuition. I pay $33,000 annually for my 2 daughters to go to school. I want you to let that marinate. $33,000. I want you to all think about, how do we get here? How did a person that was a gifted student that graduated from this school system feel the need to pull her children and pay $33,000 a year to feel like her children should get something they're entitled to, which is a high quality education? $33,000, I think when we looked at the last numbers, more than 70% of people that look like me don't even make $33,000. So for me to actually be paying that instead of paying it into college is something we need to think about. As I stated, I uprooted my family and came from Georgia in September of 2016. My dad was really sick. I was traveling backwards and forth, more than 700 miles round trip twice a week. My dad was in and out of the hospital from July to September when I got here 26 times. Imagine trying to get a hold of doctors and nurses from Georgia and not being able to get anybody on the phone, and you're the person that has to make healthcare decisions. So it was something that we had to do because you only get one dad, and once he's gone, he's gone. So the hardest thing was my 2 daughters were in 6th grade, so they just started middle school, so it was a new journey. I have one son that has disabilities, and that was doing exceptionally well. That one son at one time was doing so bad when he was in elementary school, I never thought I'd see him read a book. Now he writes speeches. And now he's in dual enrollment, and he only needs 2 credits to graduate as a senior. But that's how far he'd come. So it was a very big decision to move him. On top of that, my oldest child was a senior in high school, and I had to pick him up and move him. So even with that, when I talked to my kids, I had to convince them that it was a good decision. I mean, we did well in Marion County, and that's Trump country. So we didn't go to Trump country and do well in school. We should be able to go anywhere. And that's the way that we actually looked at it. I'm joking, but we really had that conversation. So with that, my kids were leery, but they trusted me. They trusted my judgment. And because of that, they trusted that everything would work out. So before loading up that moving truck, I had it all figured out. Let's go research the schools. Let's look at school grades. Let's look at suspensions. We're going to look at the data, and we're going to see where to put them. At first glance, Buchholz and Fort Clark were the choices. That's the only place my children could go. The rationale was I worked too hard for them to get knocked off track. With those school grades, someone obviously was doing what they needed to be done. After all, that's what it meant at Moe's, and that's what it meant at the other schools they had attended. When you actually had those grades, it meant that everybody put in some work, because everywhere else we'd been, parent engagement was paramount. How soon did I find out that not to be so? And I'm that mom. I'm the mom that volunteers. I'm the mom that shows up. I'm the mom that volunteers my time. I'm even the mom that if a child of mine tries to play victim, I'd be like, nah, let's go meet with that teacher first, so let me find out what's going on. Everywhere else we get, people love that mom. I was the mom at one time who worked 96 hours and still made a time to go to meetings. I was the mom who worked like a fool but still helped with homework. I was the mom who gave up every waking moment. I think for me it is so frustrating to be in this district because they try to act like black parents don't care about our children. When everything that we do is for our children. Every decision I've ever made since being an adult, I have made for my children. For me, I especially take it personally. I've seen my mom pistol whipped. I've seen my mom smoke crack. My dad left me when I was 8 years old. So being a parent, and one thing about it, my grandmother didn't raise my mom. I was determined to break the generational curses that were in my family. And that means doing any and everything in order to circumvent any challenge that they threw at us. That means being that parent. That means getting that education so people can take me seriously. So that means that when I say something, they believe that I know what I'm talking about. It means read books. It means take them to therapy. It means to overcome and circumvent all challenges. That's the mom that I am. That's the mom that so many people are. So that's what I thought once I got here. Everywhere we go. But when we arrived, I felt like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. I was like, Toto, we are not in Kansas anymore. In Georgia, our blackness is a strength. It's not a weakness. Every subject is taught from that. If they talk about math, they're going to talk about all the black mathematicians. In Georgia, you got teachers that went off into the world and were engineers, and they were doctors, and they got doctoral degrees, and they came back and taught because they understand the importance of teaching and giving back, not because it was the only job that they could actually get. In Georgia, if they talk to you in science, you knew a black scientist. And the reason for that is because that's identity. You got to know where you come from. You got to know who you are. There, I'll never forget, my son came to me, my oldest son, because he's cynical like me, and said, Mom, I'm so glad we didn't learn black history here. He said, because here, anytime you learn anything about anybody, they dead, they in jail, and you hear nothing else about them. He said, I don't want to be any of that. It always resonated with me. There, your blackness is where you begin. It's not where you end it. My kids went to schools like Renaissance Elementary after the Harlem Renaissance, Langston Hughes High School. We get here and we got Kirby Smith and J.J. Finley after Confederate soldiers. Even in spite of all of that, I began to show up to meetings and I started to listen. Do you know I showed up to meetings for 6 months and never said a word? Do you know how many times once I started saying things, people said, I don't think we've met. I've been here multiple times. But because I was the black lady sitting in the room, I seemed and were deemed not important. You know how many times I've said something or asked a question and people looked at me like I was the person that was sideways? You know how many times I showed up somewhere and somebody complained, whether it was a teacher or a board member, and when you gave them a solution, they looked at you as if you were a deer in headlights? Because we don't come up with solutions here. We blame and we shame. We can't learn and grow from that. And for me, it's frustrating because while we playing the blame game And while we're blaming the state of Florida, and while we're blaming parents, the only people that are losing out are the kids that look like me. Even when you tell me, well, oh, the state took X amount of dollars. They took money when we were over in Marion County. You know what the parents did at my kid's school? We raised the money and we paid for our own art, music, and PE teacher. And we paid their salary. They have them on full time for the year. And we raised money for repairs. Because the mindset was not to sit and place blame. It was to say, this is what we're dealing with, but now let's come up with a solution. I never see that here. And it's such a level of frustration. You walk around and they say, well, oh, she's so mad and she's so angry. You know what? You're damn right I am. And I think I have every right in the world to be angry, because I know with every child that doesn't get an education, they're on a direct path and a direct segue order to the prison system. I know the judicial system here is 100% privatized. I know that any child that looks like a son of mine, they write off in 3rd grade. So at 8 and 9 years old, they've already decided that they're not worth saving. So it's my job in order to save it. And if I have to be mad, fight, steal, kill, and whatever else to do it, I will. Whoa. I keep hearing poverty. Poverty is the reason. I restate, I didn't have my parents, but I did very well in the school system. I have a brother who was actually in gifted and also in magnet programs all the way up through 8th grade. You know when he lost his way? When he got to high school, because he was a little black boy in high school. You just coast. And even with me, I chose not to go to IB because nobody told me the benefit of going. So you just show up. So with that same brother, he made it out of high school, but it was when he got to be an adult that he got into drugs and things like that. His drug use, not his drug sales, his drug use got him 10 years in a federal prison. See, in my community, when you look at drug use, it's not looked as a health crisis. It's looked as a criminal act. So pardon me if I don't get on the bandwagon of the opioid crisis, because I saw my mom go to prison for being a crack user, and I saw my brother go to prison for being a drug user. Nobody ever thought that they were worth saving. Nobody ever looked at them and said, my goodness, he's intelligent. Where did we go wrong? Because in the mindset of the people in and around us with implicit biases, we are no more. We're not worthy of having kids that can go to Old Call where we can pay for them to actually have an education. We're not worthy to find out how they think and what they think in order to say we can give them something better. And I will say this, Mr. Tabado said it's because many teachers don't know. You're right, they don't know. Because I will say this, the history books have whitewashed it. But you got a whole Black History Task Force that's been fighting for how many years to get Black history in the schools? Okay. So I'm just pointing that out. So even as we say that, we have to get to a level of accountability. Even when they told me everything that was before us, my mindset was, let's do this. Because every district that I was in, whenever we were presented with problems, together we came up with solutions. Together we enacted change. And together we won. So I thought we would do the same thing here. In the middle of me trying to advocate for all children, I was advocating for my children. I was sending emails that weren't being returned. I would call administrators and say, hey, no one's returning my email. They wouldn't return my call, so then I'd have to start a paper trail. Well, let me now email the teacher, the administrator, the guidance counselor. So if you're a parent that's working 40, 60, 80, 100 hours, you've told me I need to make my child well-rounded. You told me it's my responsibility to help with their homework. It's my responsibility to help them with the work they're doing. How can I do that if I go on a website and there's nothing there for me to even know where to start? So then when I can't get you a hold of email, although all of your syllabuses say that email is the best way to communicate, I'll just schedule a meeting. When I call to schedule the meeting at multiple schools, I have to wait because there's only one person designated to schedule those meetings. If that person is not there or available, I can't get the meeting scheduled. When I just can get someone to get the meeting scheduled, you tell me you have your set time, which is either 9 o'clock on a Friday at one school, 2:45 in the afternoon at another school, or 7:45 in the morning at another school. Well, if I'm a working parent, how can I make that meeting time? So if I can't make the meeting time because I need to go to work in order to pay the light bill, that's astronomical and sky high, or I got to pay the rent because there's no affordable housing, or I need to pay my car payment because it'll take me 3 hours on the bus, then now I'm deemed to be the problem because you're refusing to work with me because now I'm impeding on your time. Then if I say, well, hey, I sent you an email, well, the response is, well, teacher don't have time to send emails or call parents back. How is it that I'm supposed to help you to help my child? Then you say, well, check the portal. Well, I've checked the portal, but it hasn't been updated in a month. Sometimes it doesn't get updated until the day that grades go in. How can I know what's going on? Yes, I have good children. Yes, I tell them to put forth the work and all the effort, but guess what? They're still children. And kids will be kids. I have one that's brilliant. All he has to do is show up and take a test. So in his mind, why do I need to do the work if I already know the answers? So therefore, I need a checks and balances system. Even with my daughters, one is an overachiever. I'm not sure who her parents are. I just ride her waves. But even with her, she became disengaged. And that's when I really knew that there was a particular issue. I would go to a school meeting. Mind you, I had to wait 3 weeks for the meeting to get all the teachers there. But when you show up to the meetings, you still don't get all the teachers. So the few that do show up, they say, well, oh, she's just amazing. She works all the way to the bell. I've never met a child that works all the way to the bell. Well, why are you not helping her to stay engaged? I have another child that got a grade I wasn't happy with. When I scheduled a meeting with you, you said, well, oh, she didn't have, I still to this day can't remember, was it internet or a computer she said that she didn't have because it just wasn't true. But I asked the teacher, well, if that be the case, why didn't you call me? And the teacher's looking at me as if I asked a wrong question. I asked again, well, if she told you she didn't have that resource, why didn't you call me? The teacher couldn't answer the question, so I answered for the teacher. Had you called me, you would have realized that that was not true. We have both of those resources. But had you called me and I didn't have those resources, that's where you as a teacher and me as the parent work together to find a way to get my child access to those resources. So therefore, the issue is not poverty, it's our response to poverty. Because poverty is not exclusionary, but it's the manner in which we look at things. I'm a child of poverty. When I went to JJ Finley, my great-grandmother was in her 80s. Trying to raise 9 and 10-year-old children. I remember being 4 years old, standing over a stove to cook corn. But guess what? I made it. And I made it very well. So poverty is not what's wrong. So I want to be clear. What I've learned, not just from my kids, but so many other kids want to know that you care. Kids want to know that you're listening. Kids want structure. Even at my own house, I jokingly say I live in a house full of weirdos. And just not in a bad way. I let their personalities be their personalities. I just realized sitting at home that my children all call me different names in terms of endearment. One calls me Mother Dear. One calls me Mom. One calls me Mama Bear. And that's just it. That is their personalities. I have a child who is 4'11" and chocolate is me that decided she wanted to ride horses professionally. That's what she decided. So everyone keeps saying, oh, Mom, you did a great job. Let children be children. You'll be surprised what interests kids besides what we put in front of them. Right. My kids have fun in school now because they don't go to a science class and read about science. They do science projects. They have fun because they don't go to history and just read about some abstract thing. They do hands-on projects. When we lived in Atlanta in 3rd grade, they built a neighborhood. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? It was a lot of work. But it was a lot of fun, and they got a lot more out of building that neighborhood to be prepared for that test instead of a worksheet that was sitting in front of them. My frustration is when we give these things to the district, they fall upon deaf ears. For me, I don't get it. You blame parents for listening. Because even too, when we show up to meetings, often my son that has special needs, he's been told over and over what he can't do. I sat in a meeting for 30 minutes as the guidance counselor fawned over him being on grade level. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you have all your credits. This is just so amazing. Are you serious? How do you think that makes my child, who puts his everything into his work field, to have someone to say that 4 times in a 30-minute meeting? How do you think it makes him feel when we go back just a few months later and the guidance counselor says, I don't think we've met. When all she had to do was look in her folder and realize we just met 2 months prior. So my thing is this, I hear that there's a lot of children. I hear that we have caseloads, but can we at least attempt to try to build a relationship and make a connection? For me, coming from Georgia, where parent engagement is actually a fundamental component, parents actually met with teachers once a month. Parents went into, and because they met with teachers and built that relationship, guess what? They were the power source. So we did all the volunteering, we did all of the parent nights, we did all of the STEM nights. It was so much less work for the teachers because parents felt like they were a part of what was actually going on. Here, that doesn't happen. Some kind of way, I feel like we're Democrats and Republicans. We look like the political climate. It's always us and them. It's us and them. It's us and them. This is a human issue. It's not a Democrat or or a Republican. It's not a parent or a teacher or a district. It's not a us against them. It's a we. And for me, it's one of the things that I can't understand is how we're not actually getting there. It got so bad, I started to spaz out. I couldn't get teachers to respond to my emails. I even set my daughters up on check sheets. So when they would have the teachers to fill it out, I explained to them how to set it up. Make sure you put it on the teacher's desk at the beginning. If you don't, you're the person that's in trouble. Do you know I had teachers who refused to sign it and said they're not having any parts of that? And they're the same teachers who also were not putting the grades into the grade book. Does that sound like a teacher who really cares about the benefit of my children and their success? How do I gauge how successful they are? How do I help them and know that you're not just putting grades in if I have no feedback? You can put whatever grade you want into the portal, but I see nothing come home. So how do I know? And I'm not the parent that cares what the grade actually is. My kids can get a C, but if they can show me where they put their all into it and they did all of their assignments, that's actually what matters. But ironically, because you put all your all into it, you never get the C. You always get the A or the B. So those are the things. I want people to know as I get closer to the end, my grievances with the school board as a parent might not seem egregious to you, but they are to me. And soon I learned that many other parents that look like me feel the exact same way. A parent portal that they keep deferring us to can be valuable, but there is no initiative that will be successful without relationship building. My pastor says the biggest form of evangelism is relational, invitational discipleship. Simply put, inviting someone you know to something that you're interested in. That's that simple. That's what brought you all here tonight. It's relational, invitational discipleship. For me, I keep being told that I'm my child's first teacher, but then I get ignored. If I ask questions, then I became public enemy number one and the troublemaker. The response is, how dare you question my years of experience? My response is, how dare you question my experience with these children who I've given my whole life to? It was difficult to show up tonight and know what to say. These days, I run on about 30% of my normal energy, but this is just that important. Every time I think about what is going on in the district, I get angry. I get angry because this is just not about me and my children. This is about all children. This is about a district that refuses to view us as more than a number on a graph or a chart. Does anyone in this room truly realize what is at stake when we fail to educate Black children? There is so much more at stake, and that's what's before you. I know that when we refer to the education of Black children, there's a great deal more. Did you know, and I've told you before about my brother and how this system has actually failed him. Do you get that in this district, Black parents have no power, yet they're being blamed for all that is wrong? It is insane that so many parents are suffering in silence, never truly realizing that they are the majority and not the minority. So many parents listening to what the school is telling them they should do without being given all the options. And when it does not pan out, the school is telling them that it's their fault. Do you get that attaining a high-quality education means breaking generational curses, racist systems, overcoming decades of oppressive attitudes and ideas, and validates what we say? I purposely don't begin with what I've accomplished because I want people to challenge their implicit biases and realize that just because a person does not fit in the box you have placed them in does not mean their voice is any less important. Ironically, the first perception is not that I am qualified. My dark-complected daughters and my sons get the same response. Someone remarks on, wow, you know your facts, and oh my, you guys are well-spoken at least once a week. As I stand before you, I am angry because many people in power act as if their power gives them the right to be angry, frustrated, and pass judgment. As a parent, what is my right? Why don't my children have rights? Why don't my children have a voice? Even now, it is Black children that are being failed, but we still are not at the table to make decisions. Why is everyone still allowing the district to tout the League of Women Voters and the Alachua County Council of PTAs as the standard for parental involvement? They don't represent an entire demographic of us. Tonight in this space, people will say, thank you for speaking up and speaking truth to power, because I have chosen to speak truth to power. I've been ridiculed by some board members and members of school board administration. I've had my name mocked in a racist and derogatory manner by the wife of a school board member. I've attempted to exercise my First Amendment right to address my elected officials on the school board with grievances, only to be gavelled down and disregarded. I have spoken up with others as we watched the 4-1 vote appoint the only superintendent with no experience addressing a racial achievement gap. I spoke up when the district tried to take the bus from the students on Lake Road Terrace that attended Eastside. I spoke up when the board voted 4-1 on an equity plan that impacts students that look like me. Yet it is still easy for allies to watch us belittled and ignored and still not comprehend why we can no longer be quiet. Angry that people that say they get it and still can believe that me, the parent, a person without the power, is more to blame for systemic issues that exist. Why don't minority parents get the benefit of the doubt? Why is it so easy to believe that us, those parents, are the reason we are in a crisis? Now my girls go to Oak Hall. To many, Oak Hall reeks of white privilege. It would not seem like a good fit for a mom that knows the importance of embracing her blackness and ensuring that her children do well. The culture of Oak Hall is very similar to the culture of my children's previous school. Parent engagement is paramount, signaled by something as simple as once a month coffee with administration, all the way to back to school receptions for parents and open door policy. Teachers work to schedule meetings around parent schedules, even if that means an administrator has to cover a class. The portal is updated at least once a week, and they actually see my daughters. When my daughters show up, they don't think that they can do something just because. They think that because they're there and they showed up, whoever they are, they allow them to be that. We didn't get that in traditional public school. They actually see them for their quirkiness, they see them for their goofiness, and they see how serious they are as it pertains to their academics. Every day that I pick my girls up and I ask them, did you have a good day of school today? They always say, of course it was amazing. Their excellence is the expectation. It's not the exception. Even one of my daughters, she's had to have a lot to do to catch up and learn, but she's getting there. One thing that was a big deal to me, my daughter, who is the overachiever that irks me, she actually tests in the 95th percentile on the standard 10, but she has visual processing deficit that I'm aware of, and she is too. Her Latin teacher realized that she can read out loud, but he just realized she didn't like to read out loud. So him taking notice sent her to her learning specialist, who gave her just a little glass magnifier with the yellow lens. The reason that it was so important to me, because it was something that was so minor. She can get by just fine, but it was important to him to build her confidence. So it doesn't matter that she has an A in the class and he's doing excellent. He saw it was one thing that might hinder her from actually shining and being who she was, and he did something about that. That's what's missing in this particular district. If you'll notice, nothing I mentioned costs money. Teachers and administration listen, and they work with the parents to develop solutions. This is all familiar to me. Now I'm just paying for a culture that is free in other districts. I can choose where I send my children. Many people don't have those choices. I have to decide if I wanted to pay for it now and keep my children excited about school, or pay for it later. I chose to pay for it now. Like so many parents, everything that we do for our children. I'm sorry, I'm not done. As you think about my story, keep in mind that I'm the parent that tried to do everything right, and my children still were not served well. The law states that every child is entitled to a high-quality education, not a high-quality education if you have good parents. When we buy into the narrative that it is on the parents, we take the emphasis from where it should be, the students. I did not have parents, but I was a gifted student in this district. My story is not about me. It never was. It is about a school system that wants me to trust it, although it has given me every reason not to. It is also about all of us in this room. What are we willing to do to fix our educational system so that all of our children can learn from the labels and the stereotypes?